So welcome everybody. It's great to be here in Chicago. My name is Scott. I work at Pantheon. We build, launch, you can run Drupal sites on our platform. I'm the Director of Customer Success. We handle support, we handle onboarding, we handle training, all the stuff that we do to kind of make customers successful on our platform. It's a fair amount of project management. Also internally, some of the projects that go on with interdepartmental initiatives such as migrations or rollouts of new products, like WordPress has come up recently, different things like that. Our team also manages those projects internally. So do a bunch of project management stuff for Pantheon. Prior to that, I worked at ProMed here in Chicago before moving out to San Francisco. I worked with Senior Fox right here, a couple other people. And I was the support manager, and I also managed projects there. Prior to that, I worked in managed services, which was was basically IT support for like Cisco, Microsoft, all that normal stuff that IT people go out to companies and do. And then even before that, I was managing projects in the retail sector here in Chicago. Actually, Oil Lily used to be here. They made really bright Dutch women's clothes, and they were in River Forest. And Chiasso was a company that just sort of closed, but they were here, and I was an IT manager there and did a bunch of project management stuff. So I'm a certified Scrum Master, that too. That's nice.
Yeah, you gotta have those initials behind your name, right, Scott?
CSM.
Right, so I'm Johnny. I work with ProMed here in town as a senior project manager, director of development there. I put recovering developer. It means, I'm distracted easily by like technical things and, have a background in .NET, Delphi, Objective-C, PHP, C#, Delphi, Fortran 77, anyone? Yeah. Good job. So don't pull that one out much, but in between Fortran 77 and getting them back into the computer IT business 12 years ago, I managed a company that did countertops and cabinets for the construction market. And one of the things that was really amazing to me as I was 40 years old and looking at starting a new career was how similar the project management skills were. That, while I was no longer building a set of cabinets or a set of countertops, strangely, it's very similar as we're constructing, we're engineering, and it was really a learning part for me. So the type of projects I work on tend to be larger projects, tend to be projects with integrations. So there's an iOS component, there's a piece that talks to e-commerce, there's another piece that's got to be high performance and reports to like a custom application on the back end. So because I just didn't know better, I get into those sorts of projects, and I'm also a certified Scrum Master.
So the reason we are here talking about this is not only do we manage projects, but like me particularly, I work with a lot of clients and partners and dev shops and agencies that are bringing websites live onto our platform. So I get to work with a lot of other project managers, which are really cool. And I sort of tried to put on a chart, like I see project managers that are really successful, kind of along the x-axis here, and I see some that are not very successful. And then along the y-axis, I see project managers that seem happy. And then down at the bottom, I see some that are really miserable. And so, like looking across the entire scheme here, I tried to think of like, what would those guys up at the top right tell these people down on the bottom left? And so that's sort of like the point behind doing something like this, because there's a pretty wide variety of PMs that I work with, and it's really kind of cool to work with such a wide variety. But there's like a couple clusters that seem to pop up, and the ones that tend to be up on the top right tend to be the ones with previous tech experience. They're technical project managers. Other clusters sort of that pop up a lot are like owners of dev shops that become project managers, or single person operations that eventually start sort of jobbing stuff out and bringing on smaller teams and that kind of thing. In the middle, there's a lot of like disembodied voices that seem to be emotionless, possibly non-human PM bots, what I like to call them. And they talk about work breakdown structures a lot, and they talk about generating documents that I think maybe is part of their program to generate these documents. But there's not much else. I'm not really sure what else is going on there. Like, I have to be careful I don't ask a question that just maybe exposes the matrix. And then finally, like down at the bottom left, what I see a lot, what a kind of a consistent pattern is the poor person that was an administrative assistant who somehow got bumped up to project management and is now handling projects, and bless their hearts because they are struggling and they are helpless. They are often kind of a pain in the ass, but you sympathize with them because they're way over their heads. And so this is sort of men with you in mind. Is there anyone here like that? Does anyone want to? No. So yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to try and do. And those people on the bottom left have led to ads like this for a Drupal shop that touts the fact that there's no project managers. Like, we don't even use them. All we do is add people who bring value. So like, that kind of hurts if you're a project manager. Hey, I don't add any value here. Like, I'd hate to be like the last project manager that said, we're not getting rid of you, we're getting rid of project management in general. So I think that we sort of talked about it, and we came up with asking the question, like, what does it take to be a successful technical project manager?
So, you know, like, there's an hour here, 40 minutes with questions. There's no way I'm going to cover all the things you're going to need to be a technical project manager. So we kind of boiled this down into like 3 main areas of skills, technical knowledge, and soft skills. And I think, like, you know, as you're looking at that, like, the first one is you know, project management. And the most thing I would say about in project management, you kind of have to have like a strategy. So if I have like my own personal theme, it's like strategy is the most important thing. And there's 2 methodologies kind of that have the zing right now, that if you go, you're going to hear the words waterfall and agile. Like, those are, I don't think you can escape it. Like, if you play buzzword bingo, you will fill your card every time if you just go for agile or waterfall, either one. I borrowed this from my sister, who's actually a PM at Rackspace, of just kind of how, you know, I see these kind of methodologies, like which ones are they valuing. And there are people that will say like one is more useful than the other, and I would really advise you to, like, these are different tools, and different tools that are appropriate for different things. And it's really important to, like, understand what they are, and understand, you know, like waterfall is like, we have these requirements and we're going to make the plan from them. You know, and agile is really more like, we have these resources, like time, people, money, whatever, like, what can we get done in that? And, you know, agile lends itself to more like, so the concept is like, waterfall is very good for highly structured things. I'm making a grilled cheese sandwich. I take 2 slices of bread. They're a specific size. They're a specific piece of cheese. You know, like, you know, you can be pretty sure, like, that's a repeatable, predictable thing. Doing new things, maybe agile is better. Like, you know, if you're not into something that is highly structured. So I'm going to talk about agile. And, you know, I'm a certified Scrum Master. And I hear the word a lot. I'm in a lot of meetings about it. And the thing that is lost on me many times is like, you know, agility is being agile. It's moving quickly something. It's responding. And I don't care what your certification is, like what your paperwork says, what your brochure says. You know, if you don't have the quality of being agile, you're not. And somebody should just call bullshit on that when you're in meetings. Like, if you're trying to get something done, you should do that. It's one of your really important skills. Most of the agile, really all of the agile frameworks come from this that was developed in a room at a ski resort by 12 individuals. If you go to agilemanifesto.org.
.sexy.
.sexy something. You know, and these were people trying to get like a $21 million project done and figuring out like, how do we get this done? Like we, you know, like we're developers, we're invested, we're like managing this project, we want to deliver something. You know, like, let's work with the people over like the tools. Like let's find the things that are important. Agile has a concept of iterative delivery, so it's like instead of extensive requirements, not instead of requirements. You know, let's get some working software. Let's look at something and see how it works. You know, because I have been on projects, I have personally delivered projects that met the specs and sucked. Like I can deliver that.
He has.
I have. You know, like, it doesn't matter if it matches the documentation. If it doesn't work, that's not fulfilling. It's not fulfilling to me as a project manager. It's not fulfilling to my team. It's not fulfilling to the customer. Like, you know, that earnesty of that, you know, it's collaborating with a customer. You know, contracts are important because, like, I really like being paid. My employer likes being paid. We want to meet that contract. There are times when I've said, this is in the contract. We need to talk about it because I don't think this is what you want. Or this is in the contract. It ain't going to happen for some reason. Let's talk about it now. Let's not talk about it like in court. Let's not talk about it 2 months down the road. Let's talk about it today. You know, like, as a technical PM, you're going to know things technically, and you need to be able to like bring that to the front, and you need to have that relationship with your, not only your customers, with your development team. Like, you know, 2 of my developers are here. Thank you. Like, they need to feel comfortable, be honest to say like what's going on, and that's the responding to change part. So. You know, like, this was kind of a revolutionary concept, and it's kind of been adopted, so, like...
Yeah, so I was just going to add one thing. The customer collaboration is a really important part of Agile and the Agile process, because they're involved in the process from out. They're not just giving a bunch of requirements, and then getting a final project dumped. Like, they're actually involved, like, you know, the pig and chicken joke, like the old Agile joke? You want me to tell it? Yes, it's a great joke. So this pig and a chicken were sitting around one day, and the chicken says to the pig, hey, the farmer's been pretty nice to us. We should do something nice for him. And the pig's like, yeah, we should. And the chicken says, we should make him bacon and eggs. What do you think? And the pig says, the way I see it, you're involved in this project, but I'm committed. And like, the goal is to have everybody committed to the success and involved in the success, and that includes the stakeholder too, which is one of the things that might seem odd being a stakeholder, being asked to help, you know, arrange things on the Trello board or on the Scrum board.
Yeah. So there's like, you know, I'm a certified Scrum Master. That's from the Agile Alliance. PMI has an Agile certification. There's at least 2 other certifications I know of. There's a number of different Agile flavors. And, you know, what I would say is, like, if you have one of these, if you're working one of these, if you're familiar with it, if you're comfortable, like, use that system. The particular system is not as important as understanding what the philosophy about Agile is. Like, you know, have your methodology, stick with that methodology. The Scrum is what we use at our shop. I call it more like consultancy Scrum, which is Todd Neercook from Four Kitchens version. Scrum is very high overhead. It's made for managing very large projects. Drupal is a rapid development framework. So where my sister works, she manages like $10 million projects. Their weekly burn of 800 hours is more than most of my projects. Scrum, full-on Scrum, works really good for them. So we have kind of that consultancy Scrum here. We also we have a support team, and that support team uses Kanban. And Kanban, so Scrum, Extreme Programming, these are all very strategic Agile flavors. So they have strategic and tactical agility. Kanban, which is what we use for support team, is all about how many tickets do I have right now and work them right now, because guess what? I can't plan for somebody's site being down, and if it's down, it's probably a fire. I probably should work on it right now. So the support team, you know, they have tasks they work on, but things get elevated, you know, something happens, a push happens, something gets tweeted, like the site load goes up. Like, we use Kanban, and we're kind of aware of which times do I use which methodology. I'm mostly on development teams, so other than my interaction with the sysadmin team, I don't have lots of interaction with Kanban, but if you have those type activities, I just like to call that out as like, that's a really good methodology. There's some lies about Agile. Like, if you ask people that are in the know and the cool kids, Agile, we're Agile, we've been doing Agile, we're going to be Agile, we have been Agile, we're Agile going to get coffee, we're Agile, you know, like. It doesn't fix all your problems. And it's not right for all projects. Talk about Kanban, like, one framework is not going to fit all the projects you work with. You may work, like at Pantheon, I think, you know, it's more of a support model. You know, it's easier to adapt one methodology and kind of get on with that. At ProMet, we work a number of different projects. We have a number of different project managers. The size and scale of the projects are different. So on my 3,000-hour project, I may use full-on Scrum. 50-hour support project, I'm going to waterfall that baby. Like that. Yeah. I'm going to put Alan on it, it's going to be done. You know, like, if you're committed to making bad decisions, Agile doesn't help you. Like, if you're just, I mean, it just doesn't. So, like, it's not always going to show immediate results. Like, Agile is harder than waterfall. Like, I got to be committed with that customer. Like, we got to be talking to each other. We got to be honest. We got to be saying, like, I don't have the dev staff to get that done, or, you know, the customer's got to be saying, you know, my management's not going to accept this, or my management would really rather we didn't cut this feature, but they'll do it. And that's got to be like an honest conversation, not like me trying to get more, or the customer trying to get more. This is like us committed to delivering that project. Not everyone's going to love Agile. If you're really waterfall, you really have a lot of experience with that, you're probably really going to hate it. And it can descend into something that approaches chaos. Like, you just can't have, it's not like we wake up every week and we have a new project this sprint. It's like, we got to have some tactical vision about what we're doing in the sprint. You've got to have some vision about what I'm trying to accomplish on the whole project. And I didn't want to say, like, you know, it's not going to improve your love life, like I wish it would, but, you know, it's just not magic. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I hear it a lot, so that's Agile.
Yeah, so waterfall sort of gets a bad rap, and like, even the Project Management Institute, which issues the certification, doesn't help itself when it documents waterfall process as something like this. Like, this is straight from their training manual. And anyone who's ever thought about getting, like, PMI certified, like, usually looks at this and says, you know what, I like Agile, you know, but waterfall, like at Pantheon, we use Agile for a lot of stuff. Most things, like we have several stand-ups throughout the day for engineering, for CSE, my department. If there's any sort of other projects going on, we're always sort of standing up somewhere. But for things like Johnny sort of talked about, like client onboarding is a set of things that are along a very straight critical path. Like one thing happens that we don't do load testing before the site is pushed live. Like that would be difficult. You know, we don't do dev training before. Like the first thing we do is have a kickoff call where we tell people how to open a ticket, because we saw people would just email their salesperson and said, hey, my site's down. And the salesperson would send it to us. So like there's a pretty specified order for things. And like when you're managing web projects, it's the same kind of thing. Like forget about that. Remember that waterfall is really just these 4 things. You're figuring out what the client needs. You are figuring out how you're going to build the thing the client needs. You're going to try and build it, then you're going to try and see if it actually works. Like it's pretty straightforward, really. And if you think about it like that, like even making a cheese sandwich can appear complicated, but really it's very simple, you know? So I think like you can make anything complicated. Waterfall doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be like 4 simple steps. Like I think the other reason that waterfall gets a bad rap is because of like the amount of documentation that's usually emitted during a waterfall project. And yeah, to maybe a developer, like the SOW and the charter and the PRDs and stuff like that may seem like a lot of work, but they are kind of fulfilling a need, and that's getting the project manager familiar with the project, getting the stakeholder to actually talk about what they're trying to build rather than just hand-waving what they want and leaving it to the developer to guess or the project manager to take a stab at and probably get wrong. Especially like with the func spec, like if anyone's read Joel Spolsky's article about creating like an interesting func spec, it's really good. And it sort of, like to me, bridges the gap between what the stakeholder wants and what the developer needs to start working on. So being able to build these, not to just generate 400 pages worth of stuff that no one's ever going to read, but covers your ass in the event of a lawsuit, but it actually kind of gets you up to speed and covers that discovery phase of the project and helps get you to the next level.
So, you know, like, I want to like emphasize like waterfall, you know, you have these documents, and just because you go to Agile, like, that doesn't remove that requirement. It removes where it happens. Like, you know, we as project managers and as clients have to understand each other. And, you know, like if you attended the continuous integration session, you know, we talked about like writing tests and having that in code, you know, which is a technical CI thing, but you have to capture those requirements and you have to define what the definition of done is. And that's got to be clear, project manager, client, and it has to be all the way down to the development and the QA team, so we're all aligned on the same path. And I see people run at Agile and they're like iterating and they're not generating any documents, they're not generating use cases, they haven't defined that definition of done. So, you know, it's really a false economy if you think like we're just going to go Agile and we're going to just do cool stuff. You know, so I think Waterfall and Agile are both great tools. Like you should have both of them in your pocket to work. Our next is technical skills, and really on technical skills, the most important technical skill is to be learning. I'm an old guy in the technology business. You know, like not many people I can talk Fortran or Clipper or 6502C assembler, like Foxtrot, right? Like that doesn't happen. Like there's new technologies that are coming out. Like when Drupal 7 came out, we didn't have mobile devices. Like that's developing now. Like you need to be learning that now. And whatever your technical skills are, like just be prepared. It's probably stale in a couple years. Like this is really, it's really a fun business if you want to be learning, if you want to be growing, Like that is the thing that's going to make you excellent, is that ability to learn. So, but I did want to kind of like talk about what are those specific things that you need to know. So Scott and I put together a little list of things that you really should pick up. Oh, sorry. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not a little list. So this
We're going to go through these one by one, so.
Yeah, like you'll pick this up, at the end of it you'll know all this. No way. Like, we are in Drupal, we're specialized in Drupal. Like, I don't get much chance to use C# in this space, which is my language. There's a lot of things to learn and a lot of things you're going to need to know for projects. This is by no means a comprehensive list, and I promise you, maybe next week, maybe next month, definitely this quarter, there will be other technologies that come out that you need to learn. I don't think Twig is on there. Drupal 8 is going to be coming out. Like, there is a number of things. So just kind of highlighted in blue is like, you need to know basic application layer, like IP, like what makes a website. You need to know version control. Like, those are minimum basic requirements for any project. Like if you were starting out, and I do some coaching for a nonprofit where we take and we train people that are out of work, and this is where kind of this list started, was I'm like, well, like I'm in the web business. I can train people to do this, so you just need to learn like Apache, and maybe you need to learn Linux, and then like, what you need to do is you need to learn, and you need to learn some of these basic things. And then for a project, if you're working Drupal, you need to learn about Drupal, and you need to learn about the things for that project. Like, you don't have to know it all at once. If you don't have a project that uses Redis, you probably don't need to know that. Don't spend your time on that in the project. Like, as a technical project manager, you need to be thinking about things you need to learn. Scott, did you have some?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think part of the success of a project manager, like what moves you up the chart to the top and right, is breaking down like functional silos. Like that's kind of the project manager's role. They speak to the developer, they speak to the themer, they speak to the stakeholder, all that kind of thing. And I think like learning to code makes it to the list for me, and that's sort of my thesis statement of this whole thing, is like, your job is to destroy these silos, not adhere to any strict project management methodology and just be one of those like, I'm a project manager, I just take stuff and I shuffle it around and make sure that stuff gets done. Like, you actually take responsibility for learning all aspects of this and take ownership of it. And like, how to code, for me, like I put that specifically instead of like how to write PHP and build modules. Like, I am what you would maybe call at this point a below average Python developer. I do a little bit of Ruby, I can do some PHP, but really, like, when I program at home, when I need to run reports or stuff at home, it's in Python. And so like, and for me that's easy because I could just go to the command line and start doing Python. Like, so PHP may not be the thing you learn to learn how to code, but I think you should learn how to code if you're going to be a technical project manager, if you want to be successful at it.
Yeah, I think it speaks to like, you need to be a structured thinker, because as a technical project manager, right, like, you're talking with the client, but we got to assume there's some technical pieces on the back end that you're working with. Maybe you're working with those integrations, and you got to be talking with technical staff, and you have to understand kind of that structured, code-oriented, like, what are the things I'm working with? And I will guarantee you, if we ask people, there would be like additional items here. You don't necessarily need to know that technology. You need to know how to ask questions about this technology, like, how does that request come across? Like, how is an API structured? How do we talk to this thing? Like, I understand enough about SSH and SSL, like, if I've got to do PCI, like, I got to know, like, the things on the site are secure. Like, I don't have to know them at the detail level. I just have to know enough to, and I think what coding adds to that is it gives you that structured, organized thinking about how do you structure code, and just instead of saying, like, it's a website, it's easy, right? Like, you just code that.
Yeah.
Like you need to have some kind of internal checkpoint for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think being a PM is similar to like developers doing continuous integration, which is tied to the sysadmin stuff. And like, where would we be without DevOps if just sysadmins, like from when I was a sysadmin, just said, that's code, I don't touch that at all. Like, that's how things are going, and I think that project managers should not exempt themselves from this sort of evolution.
So my recommendations of like places to go learn things, there's a number of like really good Drupal specialized learning places. Drupal Ladder, Drupalize Me, Build a Module. I really like the Modules Unraveled podcast. Like, these are domain specific Drupal kind of learning things. And, you know, as a technical PM, like learning how to ask those questions, like my developer just told me about like Git merges. Like, where would I learn more about Git? Where would I learn about features? Or where do I learn about the Forms API? Like, you probably don't need to know how to do that, but you need to know about it, and you need to have a resource for doing that. We're all here at Drupal Camp, and there's a lot of people smarter than me here. So I would recommend that you make smart friends. As PMs, make PM friends. I work with a team of PMs. We regularly chat with each other. Outside of the company, I have friends that are PMs. We chat with each other. When I'm stuck, sometimes I'm like, man, I got this project, it's grinding me down. I got this thing, like, help me with this. You know, whether I ping Scott, I ping someone else, like, having other people going to camps, cons, like, smart friends are a real asset. Or Google, like asking that right question, like getting that magic answer about how does PCI work in this specific thing is really an asset. And D.O, you know, we're in Drupal. I have solved many problems, like some for Alan and some for Michelle. And they have solved problems for me. It's like, on D.O, there's an issue in the issue queue about this exact thing. Look, like, you know, like entity reference, like it has a problem with the media module. Like there's an issue in the queue. Like you need to be technical enough to be able to go ask that question.
What I've learned to train my staff is you can point customers to search engines, but you don't want to tell them to Google it. It just never comes out right. So just keep that in mind. So what I recommend, asking a million questions. Like, I've never seen any project manager get fired for asking too many questions about the project. You know, the first ones may seem stupid. They probably are stupid. You have to get past the stupid ones before you start asking smart questions. That's the only way to do it. That, for me, that's the quickest way to do it. The best way to learn sometimes is through a little bit of humiliation. So don't be scared of doing it. Like, it's already like a sunk cost once you've asked the question, and you can move on to the better ones. For me, like what I like to do, like 90 days is a good time for me to try new stuff. Like, it's short enough to where I can stick with it, but it's long enough to where I can actually kind of see improvement, and I can actually get some results from it that are kind of cool. So like I'll do that like for programming in Python, or using an IDE, or doing Git stuff, or doing Drupal stuff, or something like that. And that kind of helps me to learn in blocks and actually kind of see the improvement. Like a couple books for learning Drupal specifically. You know, Larry Garfield and Team's book on Drupal 7 module development for me was always like a standard. One that Chad recommended to me, I don't know if you remember this, but front-end theming.
I think it's my copy. I can take that later.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I didn't expect you to be here, so I'll have to mail it to you. One thing that we do
You're not getting them back.
yeah. One thing that we do at Pantheon, like new people that come into my department and new people that come onto sales, is we have them build a mega site. Because especially like a lot of salespeople don't really even know anything about Drupal. So we need to teach them about everything that they're talking about. You know, they may have come from like Limelight or something like that, but they're not really familiar with the CMS. So we have them build this site that has everything on it. Like it'll be Drupal site, it'll have Solar, it'll have SSL, it'll hook up to a CDN, it'll have Redis caching, New Relic will be on, they'll be able to explain about New Relic. Like doing things like that, like these short projects, which is like a really good 90-day project to kind of cram, then you not only have sort of a finished accomplishment, but you have something to refer to. Like if you see Solar's not working, you know how to kind of see how it should be set to kind of work. So that's kind of a good way to do it in the Drupal world. And I think like a lot of the first level struggles that people have becoming technical is just learning the terminology itself. And I think like a good 90-day sprint is like listen to like the Drupalize Me and the insert content here and podcasts like that to just start getting familiar, hearing the language in your ears so you can start actually using it. And like at the end of like your 90 days, you do like a sprint and you kind of do a retrospective in kind of a good agile fashion where you see where you're at with like whatever your arbitrary list of things that you want to improve on. You know, are you at the point where you like sort of can follow the rules and do something? Or are you at the next level where you can kind of do a little bit of customization? Or are you like at the highest level, and you may not ever need to get there for Nginx if you're a project manager, but you should be sort of always sort of moving forward that way to where maybe eventually you may become an expert at something. It's just sort of like expanding your horizon. So I think that's like, for me, that's like a good organized project managery way to like look at progress in your learning process. So the last item on the list are soft skills, which are pretty important. Like, for example, a typical project may involve something like the 11th hour stakeholder who shows up at the last minute and is like, hey, what's going on here? This doesn't have this feature that I wanted. You know, I need to have that before it rolls out, and you're getting ready to push to live anyway. You know, or another thing that can come up is like, you know, we built this website and we're taking away this department and this person is losing her job, but I brought her on as a technical advisor on this project so she can offer, you know, give her take on things, and we can run things past her as kind of the devil's advocate, you know. And maybe, so basically this person is like the enemy of success and trying to derail the project however they can. It happens. You know, or another thing is like black swan events, like you lose code or a database server goes down, you lose data. You know, something bad happens, and being able to handle those things. You know, these are sort of things that require soft skills. And then usually what happens is something like the 11th hour stakeholder is brought in by the project enemy during a black swan event to kind of take control of things. So really those things are good to work up to, but really this is how things work in real life. And so being able to handle those sort of leads me to like my final chart here about like the 7 habits of highly effective project managers. And the first one, like we talked about, is constant self-improvement, like constantly trying to get good at something. Number 2 is confrontation. Like this is like maybe the most difficult soft skill to develop, but you know, like practicing. So I thought we'd do like this quick drill. We'll do it like with the first one, and you just have to say that. Like that's all you have to do. So just say that and stop. So,
but I thought a good PM never said no.
Well, let's see what happens. See, already we've gone off the path. So, hey, I still need you promised me this site would launch in a week, and I need it to launch in a week, but I have a list of other things that need to happen.
That's no.
Good, very good. So, you said it was going to launch in a week, but have you gotten it done yet? Like, is it done today?
No.
Not yet.
Cool. And say, okay, so I need it to launch in a week, like you said, but there's like 10 other features, and I need you to fit that in, and like we're out of budget, so I need you to try and get this done for me. Can that happen?
Let's go.
Good. So like a lot of times we are so used to like trying to please the customer that we screw ourselves because we just, you know, we have this thing against saying no, you know?
Well, I would add say no early. Like as soon as you know no, say it then.
Yeah, and train the customers, because the customers, like they, you know, if you did it right at the beginning, they agreed to the scope, they set the expectations, and so like the long answer is like, you want to do that, you can fill out a change order, and we're going to change everything in the budget, we start all over, but like, I would try no first. Like you can always go back and change stuff. So like this is to address the PM bot, which is about 80% of project managers that I work with. Like they're actually pretty interesting people and do stuff. Like I look at their blogs and they're, you know, windsurfing somewhere, but they get in this mode where they get on the phone and they have developers and stakeholders and there's tension and that sort of thing. And it's like, all right, let's begin with the work breakdown structure. I don't know. And like, be yourself, like bring something to it, and it gives you like a little bit of authority, it gives you like a voice, and it gives you some sort of personality that helps engage and help move the project along. Like if you're a fun person, be fun, you know, and bring that to the task, you know. You may be like the most interesting person, and they may, you know, it may help the project. And then so, like when I was a waiter, like we had the 3 W's, read it, write it, and repeat it. So like when you ask for a requirement, you ask, you know, if they say, hey, I'd like my theme to be blue, you say, okay, so you want the theme to be blue, right? And then they say yes, and then you read it back to them, and then you repeat it back to them, and then you put it in writing. So there's no, you know, the least amount of telephone that you're playing and the more stuff that you have kind of documented, even the little stuff, because a lot of times with me, I just don't remember that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, so kind of next in the list is blockers, and whether you're waterfall or agile, you should have some sort of plan for your project and know like what those requirements are. So if there are login credentials, if there's design documents, if there's some piece of content that's needed, if there's setting up hosting that's needed, like you've got to attack those blockers and keep on that. Don't like, you know, like attack them ahead of time that you know about them. If something comes up new, attack that like right now. Like just stay on target on those blockers. You know, like when you're doing your morning stand-up and your developer staff, you know, you're having a stand-up in the morning, your staff says I'm blocked on something. As a project manager, that is your cue to go empower your team by removing that. When the customer says there's a blocker, like, you know, that's your cue, like move that out. You can attain no velocity past that blocker. Number 6, success. So as kind of a senior project manager, I have taken over failed projects. I've taken over ugly baby projects. I've taken over like projects that are in trouble, over budget, behind. Like I used to do a little bit of flying, you know, and we had a saying like any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. So as a project manager, like you're going to take ownership of that project, and sometimes not everyone is going to be happy. It's your job to make the best possible outcome and to champion that and say, yes, we got the project, you know, we had some blockers, we had some things happen, we put our best effort, we're delivering it, we're going to deliver a fantastic product, we're going to deliver the best feature set we can and meet those requirements. And you know, it really, you need to champion that, and then when it's over, like that project's over, you've delivered it. So, you know, like be passionate about it, but also be like, I have done the best with the requirements that I have. And then if you're following, if you're doing all of the other things, that's going to come to you because you're collaborating with the customer. And I have had projects where at the end, maybe some management folks or some people were not happy, but on both sides of managing the project, we say like, really hard to get this done. We delivered it. This has been great. And then sometime later, everyone really gets happy, and that's like really good. As a project manager, that last 20% is what makes you great. Like how you wrap up that project, when you're getting to that last 20%, knowing that you're at the 20% and closing it and finishing strong and having a stopping point on the project, having a stopping point contractually, having a stopping point on features, you know, having done your requirements gathering and having done your continuous integration and you've tested, like, we're done, we're finished, thank you, we have a launched product, let's go to support. You know, that's what's going to make people, as a PM, that's what's going to make developers, clients, want to work with you.
Because like the natural tendency is like as the project begins to wrap up, you know, people want to check out, start the next, you know, developers want to start the next new project. The stakeholder just wants to get done and stop paying for the project. But like as they ramp down, that's kind of where you need to ramp up, because like in Agile, you know, everyone's picked all the fun stuff and done all that kind of stuff, and maybe there's just some lingering bugs. And to me, like this is where like the client is writing the final check. You know, and they can either write it with like a clean slate of stuff done, or they can write it with like this one niggling bug that we can't figure out. But the developers have already moved on to the next thing, and so you're trying to wrap up that. So it would suck to have a really nice project end with an ugly ending, I guess is the point. And so to wrap up here, the final promises, if you do this, one, your projects will succeed more. Like success is objective. If you know what success is and you sort of have it in your head, they'll succeed. Authority and trust and in you will grow. People will give you more complex projects. They will believe in you more. Stakeholders will have more faith in you. As you get smarter, you'll be surprised at what comes out of your mouth. Like those stupid questions will start actually making the developer go, huh, you're really onto something there. And, you know, we'll make the customer say, you know, he was a really strict project manager, but we ended up with a project that we're really happy with and it went really smoothly. You work more efficiently, meaning your boss will give you more projects and you'll be busier, but you'll be more proactive about being able to address things and less putting out fires or running stuff around or playing telephone between the devs and the stakeholders. And then, like, you know, a lot of project managers are creative people who just never learned to code, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you get better at it. You may start wanting to do stuff yourself, expand your horizons, that kind of thing. So for me, like, it's helped me because, like, our infrastructure is really complex on the inside, and we're doing stuff with Ruby, Node, Cassandra, LevelDB, all sorts of, like, our file system is written in C, and there's all this kind of stuff. Like, without having any ability to do any coding, I would be really frustrated. So I think, like, being able to grow as a project manager, as a technical project manager, just makes you sort of a happier person.
So we have a few minutes for questions.
A lot of what you're talking about, it seemed oriented towards being a project manager where you're dealing with customers directly. What if you're a project manager and the person coming up with the project is your boss?
I think that's how it has been for me most of, you know, except until I got into the Drupal world, that's kind of how it was. Like when I worked in retail, it was launching stores. Like we'd have to launch a store, we'd have to get the POS, we'd have to set that up, we'd have to set up the intranet, we'd have to download all the IPLUs to the stores and that kind of thing. So we were reporting, and for me, it was kind of similar. Like there were still stakeholder things that we had to deal with. So like they were more waterfall at that point in time because it was before Agile became really big. But a lot of it, the success of it determined on doing the discovery first and finding out what my boss really wanted and then implementing it. Like, do you have any specific, like, does that answer your question?
Well, I mean, oftentimes it's I think, internal that these feature requests are coming.
So you like have to do it.
It's not that there's an outside client saying, you know, will you add those?
Yeah.
But rather the features that we need are discovered while we're in the process of doing the development.
Right. And so that will, like, that's the whole point of Agile, is that it's kind of expected that that's going to happen. And I still think that there's a lot that has a lot to do with setting expectations as a project manager and saying,
I think there's kind of, like, you know, I've dealt with this in management. Sometimes there's like a false expectation, like if it's an internal project, not to treat it as a project. And like everyone's going to be a lot happier if you can go like, oh, you know, that sounds like a project. Let's get some requirements and let's treat this as a project. And like, okay, so these are the things you want out of this. And like as a project manager, like I am tasked with some internal projects, and the way to manage those is the same way I do for external projects. Is like, okay, you know, like I'm going to agree to do this project. You have to give me resources. you know, what are your expectations? How am I going to know I'm done? What's the timeline for it? Like, those are all, like, I don't think there's a lot of difference in that, you know, and that give you a way to come back later and go like, okay, you know that, like, these are the projects I have, and here's my board, so this is how big the bucket is, which thing moves.
Yeah.
But don't you find for, as you said, there's a lot of tendency on the part of management for an internal project not to treat it as a project, and what do you do in those situations where they just will refuse to treat it as such? You can have all the requirements and set them down, but then because they're your boss, they feel
So this,
empowered to just change things at the last minute, be that 11th hour stakeholder.
so
Has that ever happened to you?
yeah, like that happens all the time. So I didn't put this on the slide. Part of your job is to be a very effective whiner.
Okay.
Oh my God! You want that win? Like, well, okay, this is the project plan. Like, we agreed to that. Like, how are you going to get your project if we move these people?
Yeah, I think.
Like, I mean, so I will give you my Dilbert advice as a project manager. Things have to give other people as much pain as they give you. So, as a client, internal or external, like if you're adding features, oh man, our project deadline's like in 2 weeks. Like that's how are you gonna explain that this is not done? Because you're adding like this is like 2 more weeks of work. This could be you know what? This is not 2 weeks. This is a month. This is gonna move us a month out.
I think that's where.
And then put that in writing and copy someone else on. Copy someone above, like you're agreeing to this.
Yeah.
You know, this is the thing that's moving out. I've looked at it. Like, you just have to be really effective at like those things you were saying. Like, no, not yet, not in scope. This is a change.
Right.
I'm a project manager. I'm going to do what you told me. But there is a limited amount of things I can get done. It's just my job to say like, okay, this is the limited number of things. You're putting something else in here, so something's got to come out. So you're like deciding not to get that done.
Yeah. You're not responsible. Like, you are judged by your results ultimately, and I think even a demanding manager, it may take 2 or 3 times to understand that, but through the process, if they keep changing things, it's really important to explain that there is no magic involved here. Like, there is no way to create time out of nothing. There's no way to create available resources when there are none. And so I think where I've failed before is when I've said, okay, well, tell me what you want to take off. And then, because they absolutely will. They'll take over the project and tell you what to take off, and then it becomes their project and you're their assistant. So I think it's really important to say, yes, I LOE'd what you want to add on. It's going to change the date by this much. This is how it's going to be. And I think like it's really important for your overall, like the happy part of it is really important in this. Like if you have someone that keeps doing it to you, you are not going to be happy there. You know, so I think like defending your own, like being an advocate of the project is also kind of really important to your own personal happiness.
I have had demanding managers where I've had repeat like, yes, you asked me about that in the last status meeting and the one before that, and it's still, like, we're still not working on it. Not getting done. We've discussed it.
I sense the trepidation at saying something like that in you, but I think it's a really good thing to practice saying, and at least, like, because you could be the guy that has like 8 successful projects under the belt, and that gives you sort of the right to say that. I think it gives you kind of a responsibility to kind of say that thing.
Yeah. And it's also like, don't take personally accept that, like the requirements and resources this will not happen. Like these are the field conditions.
And as you say, if that's the way this guy operates, you're not going to be happy there anyway. So.
If every project he's going to come in at the last minute and change it, like you have to be realistic. Like if it's one thing and something like huge happens, you take it into account and you go through a normal process of, you know, adding more resources, changing the deadline, something to make the math work somehow. And you raise hell about it. You know, you say, okay, we're changing this, just be aware, this is gonna throw everything out of balance. We realize it's important, so let's fit this in there and make it work. But if you just say, okay, whatever, you know, then, you know, you're setting yourself up for it to let them know that you can do that every time. That's my opinion.
Anyone else?
Is there a general rule of thumb for status meeting time frame with clients? Because they can get
Often.
often.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I have one right now that's kind of like a troubled project, and we have like daily meetings. It's over the top. You got to wean them off. You need to own those meetings and drive the agendas. I mean, that's good meeting agendas. I don't know that this is a formal thing. You know, we do. Well, it's a formal thing. I don't know if it's a methodology anyone else uses. You know, I do my meeting notes. I share them on GoToMeeting or on the projector. The attendees, the last minute meetings, meeting notes. You know, like old business, new business, and then I repeat what the action items are and close the meeting. And part of that is having LOEs. Like, you know, I have had the discussion of like all this time. When we're in meetings, I am not able to work with the development team and get these things out. We need some time to execute on these ideas and provide the proper testing. And this is extending our timeline.
And this is where Agile is really good because they're supposed to be involved. Like they should be CC'd on all this stuff. They're responsible for reading this stuff. Like they should kind of know what's going on if you're doing things right. You have a Trello board, they can look at the board and see what's getting done. And like the whole goal is to just have your stand-ups or whatever and eliminate meetings
On an Agile.
on an Agile thing.
But if you can enable that product owner early, like on Trello or whatever, right now, whatever you're using, found that it gives the product owner / client the sense of empowerment and sense of belonging, whereas like Waterfall, a lot of times they're just left off of it.
Right.
You sort of painted it over, and that's when you get that $11 stakeholder. It's like, I didn't expect this.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Any other questions?
We're a small shop. I feel that a lot of the place where we're at right now is what I call sort of guerrilla development. That you know, being a small shop, we're forced to operate in a way that is not sane. It doesn't scale. But it is a lot of one person owns a project and doesn't communicate because there's not time to communicate,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Is there any advice about how you grow out of that?
I think it's like a managerial thing. That's where that kind of gets in there. Like I think like my job at Pantheon when I got there, there was me and 2 other support people, and now there are 7 of us. And part of it, like the first thing is whoever the manager was me scoping out how I wanted it to grow, at least putting the framework for how things would get when they are less crazy. And as we grew, we started filling in the blanks with those people. And so I think like that's the goal of management is sort of to remove roadblocks and grow the grow the department. And like if that's you, then I think even if things are crazy, making small incremental steps towards normality, towards sanity is like the goal. Even if, if it's 1 week, it's like, okay, from now on, anything you want to ask for has to be put into Basecamp or Trello or something, make minor steps towards that. When it comes, like a lot of things are very obvious. Like if you're under-resourced, you can rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic, but until you add people, you're always going to be behind, you're always going to be overworked. So making incremental steps towards showing data to people to say, this is why stuff isn't getting done, because spending 15 minutes to come up with a spreadsheet that you can show to someone, I don't know, like come up with examples to make incremental steps towards improvement with your department.
Also, sometimes, I've been on some small teams and we've just had to have hey, this isn't working. What are we going to do? I've been on a team we're really working hard, we've been working hard, and you have to say whoa.
Yeah, pulling the red cord won't get you fired. Most of the time it scares your boss into action. And I've done that before, and it's it makes me want to throw up, but it's worked out really well.
Well, if the train really is crashing,
Yeah,
like somebody, you're either going off the cliff or you got to pull the cord.
right. On that positive note, have a good
End with a strong closer. That's my motto.